My house, my rules. Maybe you should move out if you can't handle it. Those words echoed in my head as I watched my former best friend's face crumble in real time. See, Debbie thought she had all the power. She thought she could treat me like garbage in her precious house, make me her personal servant, and I'd just take it forever. But sometimes, the person you're stepping on has been quietly planning their exit strategy. And when they finally walk away? Well, let's just say some people learn that being a landlord isn't quite as easy as being a bully. If you've ever dealt with a power-tripping roommate or watched someone's arrogance come back to bite them, you're going to love this story. Hit that subscribe button because we're diving into a tale of friendship turned toxic, power dynamics gone wrong, and the most satisfying silent revenge you've ever heard. Trust me, the look on her face was worth 3 years of friendship down the drain. Let's get into it. It's 2024, and I'm an 18-year-old kid leaving home for university, nervous as hell but excited for independence. You know that feeling when you're finally free from your parents' rules, ready to make your own decisions? That was me, walking into student halls with nothing but a suitcase and dreams of the college experience. That's where I met Debbie. Now, Debbie seemed like the perfect roommate at first. She was friendly, outgoing, always up for a laugh. We clicked immediately, staying up late talking about everything and nothing, grabbing meals together, becoming the kind of friends who just got each other. By the end of our first year, when it came time to leave student halls, it was a no-brainer. We'd move in together, along with 2 other friends, into a proper 4-bedroom house share. And for a while, it was perfect. We had our routines, our inside jokes, our group dynamic. Debbie was still the same girl, considerate, fun, someone you could count on. We'd been friends for nearly 3 years by the time our lease was up, so when Debbie announced she was buying her own place after landing a job at a bank, and offered me her spare room, I didn't hesitate. Why would I? This was my friend. My buddy. Someone I trusted. But you know how they say power corrupts? Well, the moment Debbie got those keys in his hand, something shifted. It wasn't immediate, these things never are. It started small, almost imperceptible. A comment here, a dismissive gesture there. But gradually, the friend I knew began disappearing, replaced by someone I barely recognized. The social invitations stopped first. Our mutual friends would suggest nights out, and Det would find excuses. I'm tired, she'd say, or I've got things to do. But it wasn't just that she didn't want to go out, she actively began making our friends feel unwelcome when they came over. Picture this, your friend shows up at your door, excited to hang out, and instead of the warm welcome they're expecting, they're met with cold shoulders, barely concealed irritation, and snide comments that cut just deep enough to sting. "Oh, you're here again," Det would say with that fake smile that doesn't reach your eyes. Or she'd make some cutting remark about their appearance, their job, their lifestyle, then laugh it off with a dismissive "it's just a joke," when called out. You know that laugh, the one that's meant to make you feel stupid for being offended, like you're the problem for not finding cruelty funny. One by one, our friends stopped coming around. Can you blame them? Nobody wants to spend their free time walking on eggshells, wondering when the next joke is coming. The house that used to buzz with laughter and conversation became eerily quiet, just Debbie and me, and an atmosphere thick enough to cut with a knife. Then came the announcement that would change everything. I was in the kitchen one evening, probably doing dishes, because let me tell you, that became my full-time job, when Debbie strolled in with that smug expression I was beginning to know all too well. "I'm getting Sky TV installed," she announced, not asked. "You'll be paying for half." Now, let me paint you a picture of my financial situation. I was a full-time university student working 4 days a week at a retail job, stretching every penny to cover rent, food, textbooks, and basic survival. The idea of adding a cable bill to my already maxed-out budget? It might as well have been asking me to fund a trip to Mars. "I really can't afford it," I told her honestly. "Money's pretty tight with uni and everything." Her response? That cold, calculated smile that would haunt my dreams. Then you don't get a say on what I watch on my TV. My TV. Not our TV. Not the TV in the common living room that we both used. My TV. Those two words carried the weight of a friendship dying in real time. But that was just the beginning. Debbie didn't just get lazier, she became a master manipulator. Suddenly, every chore became my responsibility, but not through honest conversation. Oh no, that would have been too straightforward. Instead, she employed the insidious art of gaslighting. I'd come home from a full day of classes followed by a shift at work, exhausted and ready to collapse, only to be met with passive-aggressive comments about the dishes in the sink. Funny how it's always your turn to do the dishes, she'd say, even though I'd done them 3 days in a row. I guess some people just don't pull their weight around here. The bins became my permanent responsibility. The cleaning, the vacuuming, the maintenance, somehow, according to Debbie's revised version of reality, it was always my turn. And if I dared to point out the obvious imbalance? I work all day, she'd snap, her voice taking on that edge that made my stomach clench. You're just at university. It's not like you're doing anything important. Just at university. Let that sink in for a moment. This was coming from someone who dropped out herself, someone who understood exactly how demanding academic life could be. But in Debbie's new reality, my 3 full days of 9 to 5 lectures plus 4 days of retail work somehow counted as doing nothing. And then came the phrase that would define the rest of our living arrangement, the words that would echo in my head for months: my house, my rules. Maybe we should rethink you living here if you don't want to live by them. The first time she said it, I was shocked into silence. This was my friend talking, someone who'd shared pizza at 2 a.m. while we complained about professors and dreamed about the future. But now? Now she was wielding her homeownership like a weapon, using it to justify every unreasonable demand, every unfair expectation. Dirty dishes in the sink when he got home? My house, my rules. Maybe you should move out if you can't handle basic cleanliness. Bins not taken out the exact moment he decided they should be? My house, my rules. Don't like it? Find somewhere else to live. Dared to suggest that maybe, just maybe, we could split the chores fairly? My house, my rules. The psychological warfare was relentless. I found myself walking on eggshells in what was supposed to be my home, second-guessing every action, every decision. Should I make myself dinner if he hadn't eaten yet? Would using the living room TV be seen as presumptuous? Was breathing too loudly going to set him off? I retreated into my room more and more, emerging only when necessary. The polite conversations became shorter, or interactions reduced to the bare minimum required for coexistence. But even that wasn't enough for Debbie. Even my withdrawal became ammunition for his complaints. You're so antisocial now, she'd say, completely oblivious to the irony. This, from the woman who'd driven away every friend we'd shared, who'd turned a warm, welcoming home into a minefield of tension and resentment. The breaking point came on an ordinary Tuesday evening. I'd been at university all day, followed by a 6-hour shift at the shop. I was exhausted, running on fumes and caffeine, when I walked into our kitchen to find Debbie standing there with his arms crossed, glaring at a single mug in the sink. Not a mountain of dishes. Not a disaster zone. One mug. This is exactly what I'm talking about, she said, her voice dripping with disdain. You can't even clean up after yourself. My house, my rules. Maybe it's time you found somewhere else to live if you can't respect basic cleanliness. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. Not into anger, I was too tired for anger. But into clarity. Crystal clear, perfect clarity. This wasn't about dishes. This wasn't about rules. This was about power, control, and a person who'd mistaken kindness for weakness for so long that he'd forgotten I had choices. You know what? I said, my voice calmer than it had any right to be. Maybe you're right. The next morning, I started making phone calls. One of my friends mentioned that their friend was looking for a roommate. Within hours, I'd arranged to see the place. It was perfect, bright, clean, and most importantly, it came with a roommate who seemed like an actual human being rather than a petty tyrant. I viewed the room on a Wednesday, said yes immediately, and arranged to move in the following Saturday. The entire process took less than a week. Debbie had spent months telling me to move out if I didn't like his rules, never imagining I'd actually call his bluff. But here's the thing about people like Debbie, they never expect consequences. They assume their victims will just keep taking it, keep adapting, keep shrinking themselves smaller and smaller to fit into the cruel little boxes these bullies create. The idea that someone might actually have enough self-respect to walk away? It never crosses their minds. I called my parents, explained the situation in the most diplomatic terms possible, because let's face it, how do you tell your parents that your best friend has turned into a complete monster without sounding dramatic? They immediately offered to drive up and help me move, bless them. Parents always seem to understand these things without needing all the gory details. The beautiful part? I didn't tell Debbie I was moving. Not a word. Not a hint. He'd spent months using my potential departure as a threat, waving it over my head like a sword of Damocles. So I decided to let her find out the same way I'd learned about his new rules, suddenly and without consultation. Friday night, I packed everything I could quietly, making sure Debbie didn't notice anything different. Saturday morning, I was up early, waiting by the window for my parents' car to pull up. When I saw them coming down the street, my heart started racing, not with anxiety, but with excitement. Pure, electric excitement. The doorbell rang at exactly 9 a.m. I opened the door to see my parents standing there with warm smiles and empty hands, ready to help their child out of a bad situation. But it was Debbie's reaction that made the whole thing perfect. She appeared at the top of the stairs, probably wondering who was visiting so early on a Saturday. When she saw my parents, his whole demeanor shifted. Suddenly, miraculously, she was the old Debbie again, charming, friendly, acting like we were the best of friends who'd ever existed. "Oh, hi Mr. and Mrs. Johnson," she called out, bounding down the stairs with fake enthusiasm. "I didn't know you were coming to visit. This is such a lovely surprise." She was laying it on thick, talking to my parents like they were long-lost relatives, asking about their drive, commenting on the weather, being so artificially pleasant it was almost nauseating to watch. You could see her calculating in real time, probably wondering if my parents had heard about his behavior, trying to control the narrative. My mother, bless her, smiled politely and said something about it being nice to see her again. That's when Debbie made his fatal mistake, the comment that gave me the opening I'd been dreaming of. "So, how long are you staying?" she asked my mom, that fake smile plastered across her face. "I hope you'll be here long enough for a proper visit." The moment hung in the air like a soap bubble, perfect and fragile and about to burst spectacularly. "They're not here for a visit," I said, my voice steady and clear. "They're here to help me move out. I found a new place. I decided I didn't want to live by your rules after all and found somewhere else to live, just like you kept suggesting." The transformation on Debbie's face was absolutely exquisite. The fake smile didn't just disappear, it melted, like ice cream in the sun, leaving behind an expression of pure, unfiltered shock. His mouth opened slightly, then closed, then opened again. You could literally see her brain trying to process what I'd just said, like a computer experiencing a fatal error. She stood there for what felt like an eternity, just staring at me, probably waiting for the punchline. Waiting for someone to laugh and tell him it was all an elaborate prank. But my parents weren't laughing. They were already heading upstairs to start packing. And I wasn't smiling, I was dead serious. Finally, reality hit her. Without another word, she turned and skulked off to her bedroom like a defeated animal returning to its den. The rest of the morning, she stayed hidden, avoiding us completely. No more fake pleasantries, no more charm offensive. Just silence and the sound of boxes being loaded into cars. My parents were incredibly efficient. 2 car trips, maybe an hour total, and my entire life was packed and ready to go. 3 years of friendship, months of living together, and it all fit into 2 carloads. Funny how little space a life actually takes up when you're eager to start over. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't knock on her door for some dramatic final confrontation. I simply placed my keys on the coffee table, the same coffee table where we used to eat pizza and watch movies as friends, and walked out the door. The silence behind me was deafening. A few hours later, I was in my new place, finally breathing freely for the first time in months. My new roommate was everything Debbie had stopped being: considerate, funny, genuinely kind. We clicked immediately, and I realized just how toxic my previous living situation had become by contrast. That's when my phone buzzed with a text from Debbie: "I'm really sorry for the way I behaved. I hope we can still be friends." I stared at that message for a long moment, thinking about everything she'd put me through. The gaslighting, the manipulation, the constant threats, the way she'd systematically destroyed our friendship and driven away everyone who cared about us. And now, faced with the consequences of his actions, he wanted to apologize? She wanted to go back to being friends? My response was simple and perfect: ha 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 ha. I never heard from her again. But the story doesn't end there, because the universe apparently has a sense of humor about these things. A few months later, a mutual friend filled me in on Debbie's situation. Turns out, without my rent money, she couldn't afford the mortgage on her precious house. And because word had gotten around about how she'd treated me, how she'd driven away all our friends and turned into a completely different person, nobody wanted to move in with her. She'd burned every bridge, alienated every potential roommate, and found himself completely alone in a house he couldn't afford. Within 6 months, she'd been forced to sell the place at a loss, move back in with her mother, and quit her job at the bank. The woman who'd spent months telling me my house, my rules, ended up with no house and no rules to make. Sometimes the best revenge isn't elaborate planning or dramatic confrontations. Sometimes it's simply refusing to be treated badly, walking away with dignity, and letting natural consequences do the rest. If this story resonated with you, smash that like button and subscribe for more tales of justice served cold. Have you ever dealt with a power-tripping roommate? What's the most satisfying moment of natural karma you've ever witnessed? Drop your stories in the comments below. I read every single one. Until next time, remember, sometimes the best response to my house, my rules is simply okay. Bye.